I first read Rich Dad, Poor Dad about 16 years ago or so, and it honestly has had more impact on my finances than probably any other personal finance or money book. And you would think because it's generally a real estate investing book that I would be, heavily into real estate investing, that's why it would have been so inspirational. But it actually was one or two other little points that he made in the book that I think a lot of people actually overlook and miss, that have just had a radical impact on my finances. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about one of the kind of little known secrets that he kind of dropped in this book that I think a whole bunch of people miss, and that if you get a hold of it, it really can absolutely just change your financial future. So if that sounds good to you, stay tuned and we're just about to start. Hi, and if we haven't met, my name is Bob Loddick. So glad you're here. And on this channel, what we do is we give you tips and strategies on how to put more money in your pocket. And then we also talk about some of the timeless biblical principles on how to manage that money wisely. So if that's something that resonates with you, definitely hit the subscribe button so you can hear from us as we create more content. But also, as we go through this video, I'd love to hear if you have any comments. I'd love to hear when you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and kind of what some of your big takeaways were. So if you can share those down in the comments, I would love to read them and love to respond back to you on any of them. So with all that out of the way, let's kind of dive into this one lesson that changed everything for me. All right, in this lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about my kind of overall philosophy and strategy for buying things. And I'm not talking at all about consumables and about food or toilet paper or anything like that, although some of this would apply to that, but a lot of it won't. But I'm talking more about products and things that we would be buying that would last any certain amount of time and that typically depreciate in value. And I have one question that kind of circles through my brain whenever I'm buying anything. And that question is, how much will I be able to sell this for in a year or two or whenever I'm done using it? And by asking myself that question, it forces me to make a smart buying decision and not buy some things that, would have no value in a few years, or find better ways or smarter ways to buy them and then sell them. And the way I challenge myself is that I want to sell something a few years down the road for the same price that I bought it at now. And I've been successful at that with some items. And a lot of times I'm not successful, but the goal is to get as close to that point as possible. So when I buy something at, say, $100, I would love to be able to sell it at $100. And that's kind of my goal with any purchase that I make. So there are three key principles that I kind of want to elaborate on in this video that tie into this. And the first one is to buy low. The second one is to buy things that hold value and that are in demand. And then the third one is to sell high. And so we'll dive into all those in just a minute. But let me step back a second and kind of explain how I came to kind of view my buying decisions through this lens. And for me, it all started reading Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, many, many years ago. And one of the things he said in that book was, he said, rich people focus on buying assets rather than buying liabilities, and not rich people focus on buying a lot more liabilities and don't buy very many assets. And he defined asset as anything that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So for example, in the book, Robert would have said that it's good to buy a house that you're renting out that's generating income for you, because it's putting money in your pocket and that's an asset and that's helping you build wealth, as opposed to spending that money on a vacation or something that is taking money out of your pocket. In the asset categories, he might also include maybe a stock that's earning you money, really any kind of investment or anything along those lines. And then anything in the liability category is anything that you're paying money for and that you're not getting that money back. Over the years of just kind of thinking through this, I determined that I just didn't want to lose any money to depreciation on anything. And while that's not always possible, I think we can do a good job of minimizing the amount of depreciation. And that's where these three principles come in. So the first one is buying low. And so the key here is to find the best place to buy it and the best way to buy it. So like we talked about in the online shopping trifecta that I use, it's a strategy that I've worked on to really minimize the price I'm paying up front on any particular object. Now that's something that I'm buying that's new, but honestly, ideally, I'd much rather buy it used. And eBay is a great place for this, because you can find what the real value of an item is, because it's a worldwide market. And essentially, whatever things are selling for on eBay is a very accurate measuring stick for what something is actually worth and what the market says that it's worth. So whether that's a used iPhone or whether that's a piece of luggage or a vacuum cleaner or whatever it is, essentially you're going to be able to tell what an item is actually worth based on what it's selling for on eBay. So for me, whenever possible, if I can buy something on eBay, buy something on Craigslist at a lower price than I can get it new, I take advantage of those offers. It's just a great way to minimize the amount of depreciation that that particular item is going to have. Additionally, when you buy something on eBay, and as long as it's not something that's going to depreciate really fast, so consumer electronics are going to have a really quick depreciation curve. But a lot of things that you buy on eBay, if you try to sell them a year or two later, oftentimes you can get pretty close by selling them on eBay to what you paid for them. And I've even had instances where I actually made more selling it just a couple years later. So just by using eBay, you can possibly get really, really close to reaching this goal of selling the item you just bought at the price that you bought it for. All right, and so the next principle here is to buy things that hold value and that are in demand. And this also is where eBay is going to be really, really helpful, because you can find out, you can see what things are in demand, what people are bidding on, and you can learn what those brands are that people are seeking after, because that's a really key part of it. Because you can buy something that's a no-name brand that might be just slightly cheaper than something that is a name brand, but oftentimes a name brand is going to be able to sell for a much higher price, 2 years down the road. And so that's something that I'm always keeping in mind. So I do like to get the lowest price possible, but sometimes it makes sense to spend a little bit more to get a name brand that's going to hold its value a lot more than something that's going to be worth nothing that might be a little bit cheaper now. So for example, if you go into Walmart, you might be able to buy a pair of dress shoes for $40 or $50. But 2 years from now, you're not going to be able to sell them for a dime. On the other hand, back when I was working in a corporate office, I had to have nice dress shoes, and I realized that I could buy Allen Edmonds dress shoes on eBay for about the same price, $40 or $50. And these are $300-$400 shoes that, in my case, I was able to find some that were in pretty good shape and they looked great. And I just kind of washed them out, get them all cleaned up a little bit, and then I had really, really nice shoes for the same price as what I would have gone into Walmart and bought. And then additionally, the extra benefit of this, and not on top of having much, much better shoes, is that I was able to sell them years later for the same price that I bought them for. So the magic of this is that I get to have something that's really, really good, and that it essentially doesn't cost me anything to use it, because I'm buying it and selling it for the same price. So when you start thinking about this and you see the potential of what's here by kind of shifting the way you make some of your buying decisions, it gets really exciting. Yeah, another example I always love telling people about is many years ago, my sister had an old Taurus that she was trading in to the dealer, and the dealer wasn't going to give her much for it. They were going to give her $1,000, and I think Blue Book value on it was like $1,700 or something like that. And so they were going to give her $1,000, and I said, no, I'll just buy it for $1,000. And so she sold it to me. I bought it for $1,000. I was working from home, so we didn't need it very often, but I drove that car it was about 6 years or so until we ended up trading it into a dealer when we got a new car, and then I got $1,000 for it there. So essentially, we drove that car for 6 years, bought it for $1,000, and sold it for $1,000. So yeah, that's always fun when you can take something that is one of the worst things in terms of depreciation, cars, and do something like that. So the key in this case was that the car had depreciated so much that it was pretty much going to hold its value. So now that it was almost, it might have even been a 10-year-old car at that point. So much, like it had probably depreciated 90% off its original value. And the rate of depreciation just slows down so much at that point that I was able to hang on to it for 6 years and sell it for what I bought it for. And had I followed the third principle, I probably could have sold it for more than what I bought it. So that brings me to the third principle, which is to sell high. And actually, I should probably add to that, to just sell at all. Because I think so many of us just buy things and we let them sit in our garage or in our closets that we aren't using for years, and we're not doing anything with them. They're just sitting there, not doing anything, and then when we die, somebody's going to take it to Goodwill. I think just selling it at all is a really, really important thing to be thinking about, because we have all this value laying around us that's not being used. And for me, it's Craigslist and eBay. Those are the two places that I like to unload and sell things. There are times where other outlets make sense, but Craigslist and eBay are probably the two best places to sell something and get top dollar for it. Almost anything else is going to be a convenience play. So, for example, there are websites that you can just mail them your phone and they will send you a check. And so, you're earning less money for that convenience factor, but if you don't have any time, that's still better than letting your old phone sit in a box. And when it comes to deciding between Craigslist and eBay, that's pretty simple for me. Basically, anything that isn't going to cost too much money to ship, I will sell on eBay, because eBay is probably going to be the best option because you're selling to a worldwide market versus Craigslist is just your local market. So you're going to have a lot more buyers, in theory, on eBay than you would on Craigslist. So anytime I can sell something on eBay, I do it there. But certain things like a couch, or something really heavy, an elliptical machine or whatever, I'm not going to try to sell that on eBay because it's going to be cost prohibitive if I have to spend $150 to ship it or something like that. So I save the really big and heavy, awkward things for Craigslist, and then any of the smaller items will go on eBay. And that has worked out as a pretty good system kind of for determining what the best place to sell it is. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of how I process my buying decisions and how it's really helped us make smarter decisions and essentially have more things of value that we can sell at a later point. So I challenge you to ask yourself this question, whatever you're buying next, just be thinking about this week, how much will I be able to sell this particular item for? And then I'd like to challenge you also to successfully buy something at a much lower price with the intent to be able to sell it at a similar price a couple years down the road. So just keep that in mind as you're making buying decisions, and I think it's going to help. All right, so I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, I would love it if you could leave us a thumbs up down below. And again, I'd love to hear what your takeaways were from Rich Dad Poor Dad. So leave them down in the comments below. So this obviously was my big takeaway, but I'd love to hear what was yours. So let us know down in the comments, and that is all for today. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.